Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today's show is about vision, how we see ourselves, how we see our neighbors, and how we see Detroit's future.
That includes a story about the divides between Chaldean and Muslim neighbors during the Trump era, and the courage to claim your identity when the world wants to box you in.
Then we'll turn to Ali Evans and God and I Eyewear for the latest episode of Container. He's not just designing frames, he's designing a way to look at Detroit through a sharper, bolder lens.
Plus, we'll hear how the Detroit documenters are proving democracy isn't an abstract idea. It's something you defend seat by seat, meeting by meeting.
And later, we'll step inside Season Fair, a new art showcase at Michigan Central that shows why Detroit's creativity belongs on a global stage.
We begin by unraveling the tension between faith, politics, and cultural identity in one local neighborhood. In Metro Detroit, home to one of the largest Iraqi communities outside the Middle East, Muslims and Chaldeans live side by side. That closeness has revealed strong divides. We saw those sharp divisions at the ballot box. Chaldeans, guided by Catholic faith and conservative values, often leaned Republican. Muslim Americans, once loyal Democrats, broke away in 2024. Many chose Jill Stein over Kamala Harris. They were angry the Biden administration didn't stop the catastrophic death and destruction in Gaza, what a growing number of human rights experts are calling a genocide. That tension is important to understand when watching Pomegranate. It's a film by Iraqi American author and filmmaker Weam Namou. The movie takes place years earlier during the 2016 election. It follows Nidan. She's a young Muslim refugee in a conservative Chaldean Christian neighborhood. It's about politics, family, and identity, and it shows how stereotypes, especially those placed on Middle Eastern women, shape lives here in America. Weam has written more than 20 books that explore similar themes of belonging and identity. With Pomegranate, she brings those stories to the screen in her first feature film, and she joins us now. Weam, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction.
Of course. You came to Detroit from Baghdad when you were 10 years old. I have to tell you, my father also came to the U.S. from Iraq around that age, and I'm so glad I got to discuss with him what that was like before he passed away several years ago. My conversations with him have me wondering this. What do you remember most about arriving here?
I remember the culture shock. It wasn't until I arrived to the United States that I realized we are going to live here. Because we left in secrecy, we were not told what was going to happen. We just knew that we were coming to America, maybe on a visit or something. So I never said goodbye to my friends. I never understood what was happening until we came here and I realized, okay, this is our new home. And it was really that. I was surprised by a couple of things. I had read Gone with the Wind in Jordan as we waited for a visa. And so when we landed, the other thing I was expecting to see that I didn't were horse carriages and puffy big dresses from the 1800s and everything that was, that Scarlett O'Hara was all about and her people. So that was another shock for me.
I mean, it sounds like a very disruptive moment for a kid to experience. And it has me wondering if you felt like you belonged in either world at the time, an Iraqi one or an American one.
It took a long time for me to learn or feel where I belonged. I mean, it took a lot of work and healing and trying to understand. And it was harder for my older siblings who were more, who had, who didn't go to school here. The school system here really helped me to try to assimilate and acclimate. They were wonderful in doing that, but it's still inside. I felt so much guilt, especially as I was witnessing the wars that were taking place in Iraq, the 1991 bombing, the 2003 war that was very unjust towards the Iraqis, the sanctions that went on for 12 and a half years. And so there was a bit of guilt that why did I survive and get away from all of that while many people who I loved had to experience it?
I think people who are listening who are part of the diaspora can really relate with this. It's a mixture of guilt to see what's happening in your home country, but then also some gratitude that you are safe, no?
Yes, and the gratitude increased tremendously over the years, especially as I became a mother. And I better understood what my family, what my parents had to do, what they had to sacrifice to come here to ensure that we had a better life. That gratitude quadrupled in 2014 when ISIS attacked our ancestral land that had been there for thousands of years, where Christians lived. And until now, the town that my parents and grandparents and great grandparents were from, Tilkef, is totally destroyed because of ISIS. And so I started understanding that rather than feeling guilt or sadness where I'm at and trying to understand about it, I realized this was an opportunity. It was a great opportunity given to me to utilize my talents as a writer and filmmaker to tell stories that could help contribute somehow in a positive sense. I figured God, for some reason, had me born in that land and brought me to this land where I have so much freedom. I mean, I couldn't do 1% of what I'm doing here today if I was back in Iraq, unfortunately.
And as you mention this contrast between what you experienced here in the U.S. versus Iraq, it does make me think about your latest project, the film Pomegranate, and how that also elucidates some of those contrasts. I mean, we hear that from the characters as they're sort of figuring out what life is supposed to be like, what they thought it would be like in the U.S. versus what it was like for them back home in Iraq. Tell me this, why set the story during the 2016 election, which was a moment when political and cultural divisions were really sharp?
Well, what happened was during that time, everybody was becoming a keyboard warrior, a social media warrior, and they were just going at it on the internet. And I tried that a little bit. Wasn't my best strength. I love to create more peace and through storytelling, especially like long stories, books, and feature films. So I decided, how am I gonna use my talents and use my creativity to create something positive out of what's happening. And so I decided to write a story. All my stories are, even if they're considered novels, are based on true things that I see and experience around me, and they are semi-autobiographical. And the reason I do that is because there's such a void in our stories. So much is missing. There's the focus on terrorism, wars, Islam in a negative sense. And so I wanted to show the stories of the non-stereotypical, even though these stories do exist. They do. But however, there's another side too that exists that does not have a chance to be told. And so I took all my creative energy and focused it on this story. And it's really based on different aspects of my community. I mean, I live in Sterling Heights, nicknamed Little Baghdad.
Yeah.
So it's not really hard to get that material and put it together. So that was the reason. Having come from an authoritarian regime, and also that the division that was happening between the Republicans and the Democrats, because you know what, this is the type of thing that would be. This is why we left Iraq. We left it because the divisions were creating fatal situations. Even what happened recently, unfortunately, with Charlie Kirk, people are killed for their difference of opinion. And I love this country so much. I don't want that happening again. So I felt like it's also a cautionary tale to show that we can have different opinions, we can have different beliefs, we can have different religions, but live peacefully, as really is the case in Sterling Heights, in my opinion.
So, what you're saying, a lot of your work is, and this film, Pomegranate, as well, is stemming from a frustration that there's such a lack of nuance in the stories and the depictions of Arab and Middle Eastern people from, let's say, a more westernized white lens. I mean, I've certainly felt quite frustrated about this as well. And you've said this film is about breaking stereotypes, especially around Middle Eastern women. I'm wondering what stereotype frustrates you the most, and how the protagonist, Niran, pushes back against it on screen.
Well, the two major stereotypes are that Middle Easterners, especially with regards to women, are either victims or, well, actually, mostly they're victims and oppressed, and then that the men are somehow, either terrorists or something, usually very negative. In my community, in my family, my father was very progressive and wanted his girls to really follow their dreams. I think where I am today is because of the support, not just of the women, but really like my father and my brothers and other men in my family, including my husband. So Niran, what she shows is there's many Muslim women who they are very strong, they're very beautiful, but it's oftentimes society is not allowing their stories to come out. Now, I have to say, what I discovered, this is not just because the West is trying, to oppress our voices in any kind of way or to push us back. It's also from within. Our own communities don't have the kind of history with storytelling, with sharing authentic stories. We don't have strength in that. We don't understand the value of that enough to invest in it. So part of the problem is within our own communities who have addressing issues, especially related to women, that might are trying to decide, should we keep wearing the hijab or not, or some women want to, some women don't, and these are the conversations that we have in our bedrooms, and they're okay, they're wonderful conversations. Actually, they show how intelligent Middle Eastern women are, but we don't have that opportunity to tell it because we are pushed away from Hollywood wanting stories that will sell, like honor killing. Okay, let's have the terrorists as always. These are the ones, the action movies that bring us profit. And then from our own community, we get pushed back because they feel like, oh, well, we don't know if we want to talk about that. So imagine what a miracle Pomegranate was, given the lack of support. But you know what? There were the spirits within it, the women and the men that made this film happen. In this country, you just need the spirit, the love, the interest, and the passion for what you're doing, and you can make it happen. And it's thanks to them that this movie, and thanks to my faith, to my prayers, that this film happened. But it had people from all different backgrounds. The Muslim family was played by real Iraqi Muslims, and the Christian family by real Chaldeans. And by the way, this was not set up that way. It was just divine intervention, and I'm grateful for that. Scott Rosenfeld, he's a Jewish man, the executive producer of Home Alone. He was our executive producer. We had people from LA, our producer Sam Sacco,
It took a
our
village,
editor.
in other words. It really took a village.
Yeah, our editor, a black, wonderful man that stuck through me, and he's now working with me with my next feature film, Jamal Adams, Kevin Hoa, our cinematographer. They backed
Niam,
up all the time. Yes,
yeah, yes. I want to. We're gonna run out of time here, and I want to make sure that we can address a few other salient
sure.
points here. My guest is author and filmmaker Weam Namou, creator of the film Pomegranate. We're talking about Middle Eastern identity, cultural tensions, and how her film reflects life in Detroit under Trump. I think we would be remiss not to dig a little bit deeper into some of the political divisions that feels like a extremely relevant point right now. In 2024, Muslim Americans in Michigan, they moved away from the Democratic Party, as I mentioned at the top, while Chaldeans remained largely conservative. And we know that the catastrophic conditions in Gaza at the hands of the Israeli government and the Democrats' failure to stop that is what turned many Muslim Americans away from the Democratic Party. Do you see what's happening in Gaza? What a growing number of experts are calling a genocide. Do you see that creating any common ground between communities that have often voted differently, like Muslim Americans and Chaldeans, or is it deepening the divides?
Yeah, this is a very tough subject because I'm so against any kind of war of this type, just because, again, I saw what happened to Iraq. Even though I wasn't in the war, but I saw the destruction and the unnecessary lives that were lost. I think the biggest issue, and with me and a lot of people I know who were questioning the Democratic Party, I think the celebrations that happened after October 7th, and this was before Israel even went into Gaza, I think that was very difficult to see because it literally is how ISIS treated our villages after they attacked them. Those celebrations that happened even here, even now, me speaking about that, was very difficult because it just triggered so much trauma of what we had gone through. And so trying to understand how this could be, because people did not celebrate when ISIS happened, and that was 10 years ago. Fast forward 9 years later, and that was very troubling. And so trying to understand the terrorism versus the innocent people that are being bombed and paying a price for this. We don't want neither. We don't want terrorism. Our community does not want terrorism. Who does? And who wants war? They're both wrong. They're both destructive.
What kind of political path forward do you see for Arab and Middle Eastern communities, which really are at a crossroads? Do you think that there is a trajectory that will allow these communities to come together and build more unified political power?
Yeah. Well, if we look at Pomegranate, the message behind that and the story, which applies to me, even as whether you're Christian or Muslim or whatever you are, when you come to this country, you come because you want what the country has to offer. Freedom of speech, all the rights that we are given as individuals. This is what we came here for. So I think it's important while we honor our roots to really embrace the American way of life and the American dream and know that as individuals, how can we contribute? How do we use our talents to contribute to this country that we came to? That if we were back in, like for instance, in Iraq recently, there was horrendous situations happening to the women there, that the women of Iraq were reaching to the women of the U.S. to help. So we serve a strong position, and we can help so many people if we really embrace the rights that we have here. I think we have to start with that, is that we have to all embrace that we are Americans first. and our backgrounds are secondary.
I want to close on the notion of storytelling and its power, because I realize that that is something you firmly believe in, that when someone sees the world differently because of a story, that it can be life-changing. And so for young Middle Eastern women growing up here in Michigan, let's say maybe feeling caught between two worlds, what do you want them to hear in this story in the last 20 seconds that we have?
You have all the freedoms that America has to offer. You can choose what you want to wear, what you want to pursue, how you want to pursue it. You have all the freedom and use it. Use all the beautiful things that this country has to offer, and you will live the life that you want, that you came here for. Nobody can stop you, not here.
Author and filmmaker Weam Namou. Her film is Pomegranate. Find it on Apple TV, Amazon Video, Hoopla, and more. Thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you.
Arena workers in Detroit want to improve working conditions at sports and music venues. The Detroit Documenters will bring us an update on that. This is The Metro. Stay with us.